One of the consistent requests we've been getting after heavy hitters and after Pro Tour LA is, what does the state of the commoner meta look like? So today I'm bringing you an update to my ultimate and absolute bestest commoner format tier list. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, my flesh and blood friends. Welcome back to the channel and another installment of Dice Commando, our commoner format series here on the channel, bringing you the request. I've received many requests over the last month or so for an update to the absolute and bestest tier list following heavy hitters, how the new heroes fit into that. I do want to acknowledge, this is coming out in the first week, actually technically the second week of April. And we're only about 6 weeks away from Mistvale, which I do think is going to impact Commoner quite a bit. Or I should say is going to have a big shakeup in Commoner. I don't know how much it will impact Commoner, right? I don't want to get ahead of myself or ahead of ourselves. I don't want to go too down the rabbit hole on that one, but it seems some of the mechanics seem a little clunky in terms of the number of steps to get there, so we'll see how that plays out with Commoner. One would assume in order for that set to be draftable, there's going to have to be Commoner support, but I digress, okay? So the way we're going to look at this today is I've broken it down into four bins. Now, I want to be very clear about something. There are 37, I believe it's 37 legal Commoner heroes, non-rotating format. It's not going down, folks. It's not going down. So what I have, the categories you can see here, I have the top heroes. I have what I'm calling the meta pushers, which are folks that are kind of, to a certain extent, not only good in their own right, and not only could show up and win on any given day in their own right with the right pilot, but they also, to a certain extent, impact where the top heroes sit, right? Because of matchup-based stuff like that. When you have such a big field like that, matchups matter in this game, right? So meta pushers. Then we have legitimate shot, which means that, again, they could show up and do things, probably not super well positioned. And then I have in the last case, which is bring the spice, which is basically to say, I'm not saying you can't win with it, but it's going to be a long row to hoe, I think is the expression there. All right. So let's go ahead into who I see today as the top heroes in the format. There are 4 of them. I have Ira, I have Iyslander, I have Bravo, and now adding in Olympia. I believe very strongly that let's go ahead and start with Olympia, specifically on Decimator Great Axe. Now, one may be asking, well, why is Dorinthea not there with Decimator Great Axe? I'll tell you why. I think she's very good. Spoiler alert, she'll be in the next section. But I think Olympia has an advantage here because, in my opinion, Decimator Great Axe works better when you get to the point where your opponent has to block, right? Now, typically that requires taking their health away in order to get there, but Olympia can change things a little bit with the wagers. Now, I want to be very clear about something, we all understand that like cash in and stuff like that, they're rare, so they're not legal, but the gold does matter. There are still some plays he can make off of that. And again, the fact that he can come in and wager, and they might not want to let you hit. They might not want to let you get that vigor. They might not want to let you get the agility token. You're like, well, why do I care about the agility token? Because the deck's playing stuff like push the point, critical strike to be able to follow up on the back end and just present a ton of damage. So that is why specifically I have Olympia as higher rated than Dorinthea, who, yes, is still very good. Again, remember in Pro Tour LA, 3 of the top 8 decks put Decimator in there, and it's a relatively new concept. Definitely something that we need to watch going forward. All right, Ira. Do I need to say more on Ira? She's fundamentally phenomenal. Great learning hero. Belongs in the format. Her with Kodachis might be too good. Honestly, they might be. She's got stuff like at the time of I'm shooting this, nothing has been done with Surging Militia. Also amazing with her. She's got the Pouncing Paws and the Tearing Shuko, which create the free 2 attack. I mean, all the ninjas have that, but it's really good with her. Plenty of amazing options there. Ira is a fundamentally amazing hero. Iyslander is also easily in top tier, no question there. And that's, Bravo also, to that point, part of the reason Bravo is as high as he is matchup based with being so good into Iyslander. Bravo really struggles into Ira. But going back to Iyslander, playing the Boltyn build, it's just fundamentally good math. And again, you have the ability to play 2 turns to their 1 very consistently throughout the game, which is, again, a fundamentally, perhaps even, I'll actually link the video. I talked about, the advantage of that in Arcane and why Arcane sometimes feels unfair to that point. And she can do it very consistently in a less efficient format, which almost makes it a little stronger. She also has a pretty good pairing into Ira, because Ira tries to go wide, and if Iyslander can disrupt, and then they already spent their blue on a Kodachi, well, now they're taking damage. And again, you can just throw. Sometimes just comes in with the Wounded Bull for 8. Arsenal's a card. So that's a rough go. Okay. Now the other reason that, aside from a good Iyslander matchup, despite the fact that he's really bad into Ira, I shouldn't say really bad, he really struggles into Ira. Bravo with all of the new discards, right? The pump and thump build that's my build. It's not a secret on here. I think that's a very strong build to be able to strip cards. There's not a ton of ways to strip cards, if we're being honest, in this format. And Bravo does a really good job with that. He just presents, again, pretty good value over the course of what he can do, and he has pretty positive matchups. He does pretty well into Olympia, because from a race standpoint, when he's stripping cards, you gain a lot of advantage there, right? And Olympia, obviously, for the, circling back to Olympia, when I talked about how Olympia does really well if he pushes the damage, if you get Decimator, I should say, into a turtle zone where they're getting, only swinging for 4, a lot of times you're happy to take that 4 and come back for like 8 or more, right? So I think he does pretty well into the Decimator builds. Right, now let's go ahead into the meta pushers. So I do still have Fi on this list. I do think that the Rupture build for Fi is the preferred version, as opposed to, kind of the old draconic go wide that was there with Stubbies. I do think that's really good, but again, right, think about it with Fi, you've got, in a Rupture build, you still have the Shukos, the Shuko and the Pouncing Paws, right? That, you know what I'm talking about, right? It's really good value to just pull a 4th attack kind of out of your bum. Really effective. Moving into Victor. Victor is not as good as Bravo in this format. He's not as good as Bravo. In most of the others, he's better, right? But you do still have options for him with getting the card advantage and just presenting good value, fundamental to how Bravo does. I don't think you play Victor in the card stripping thing. I think you just try to value out, which makes a lot of sense. Can still sit down with a ton of armor. He's, again, is he as good as Bravo? No, but I think he's still pushing the meta. Probably does well into Iyslander, does well in Olympia for the reasons mentioned, struggles a little bit in Ira. We have Dash here because Dash is just good, right? She is susceptible to fatigue in certain matchups, which is why I have her not running the meta. But she picked up a lot of stuff in Bright Lights. If I'm being completely honest, I don't feel like we've seen Dash be completely explored with the stuff that she picked up in EVO. There's a lot of stuff like Recharge and stuff. I haven't seen that in a lot of decks. It's in mine. But I think there's a lack of full exploration of Dash, probably because folks are afraid of getting fatigued. We saw Adam 2 Commoner Crawls ago do very, very well on that. Kassai, I have put in here primarily because of, I think she is just incredibly efficient, always has been. And her with Blood Run Wine is crazy. It's a free turn, right? She can have a 0-card turn and come at you for 4, threatening +1 on each. Full block, obviously going in, right? Full block, you'd have 0 cards in your hand. Crazy good. Crazy good. And then we have young Dorinthea. I think I kind of explored this a bit, obviously young. But for Dorinthea, I think the best play right now for Dorinthea is, in fact, the Decimator build. Being able to threaten coming in twice with Decimator is pretty scary. That kind of does start to force blocks a little bit on them. That's pretty neat. Now, obviously, you have to have at least 2 cards in hand to be able to threaten that. But it's cool. It's cool. Okay. The the front pump build, pump and thrust build. There we go. The pump and thrust build that I presented on here is good. It is good. I still think it in of itself, that build in of itself probably deserves in the legitimate shot category, not the meta pushers category. So specifically, I'm talking Decimator Dorinthea in here. All right, now I'm not going to spend as much time on all of the heroes from here on out. So for legitimate shot, we have Rhinar. I still am pretty high on Rhinar's value with club specifically. I think it's a good deck, but it's, I don't think it does as well into Ira and with a lot of things it's trying to do with doing beat chest and depending on the 3-card hand for Madcap, so you have Madcap Charger, you have the beat chest mechanic with Bonebreaker, or you have lead with, makes it really, really, really susceptible to Iyslander. And I think he ends up just swinging club a vast majority of the time against Iyslander. And I don't know that that's going to be enough to take her out. But, I'd have to run probably 5-6 games into that to really get a good idea. And I could be wrong on that. But that also seems like a not fun way to play Rhinar. Okay. Now, Chane is basically in the same position that he was before. Yes, he lost stubbies. We've talked about that, and I'll post that as well. We've talked about that in another video, how he took a hit, but not a massive hit. So he's okay. But I just don't think, I think he can probably outrace Dash, but maybe only a little bit. And I think Dash is probably better positioned with how she can come over that. Like she has the 4, she has the 6s available to her. Whereas Chane, if he's, probably he's doing like the shrill thing. I think it's a little slower, and I think he starts to fall apart if he gets bad draws, whereas Dash is always just kind of like on board with boost. So I do have him in a legitimate shot. Again, I want to be very clear. He can come, win an armory. I think it's solid, but I don't think that he could win like a gold foil or something like that. Okay, we also have Betsy in here. The only reason Betsy's in legitimate shot is because Guardians are just functionally good, right? Same reason we had Victor where he is. The overpower thing is tough for her in Commoner, right? In terms of getting the wagers. There's only really a couple ways to do that. You've got Big Bot, Bigger Than Big, and then Money Where Mouth. I think you play the Money Where Mouth plus the Anathos thing and try and do the Anathos wager. It's okay, but I don't see it. Again, I don't consider it to be a meta pusher, right? I think you could show up and do well with it, but I think a lot of things have to go right for you in order to make that happen. Prism is basically the same, right? There are like sheep in Dusk Till Dawn, those, was it Celestial Reprimand, I think it was, right? The one where it essentially like the cheaper Blinding Beam of sorts, right? Effectively for what we're trying to use it on, has really changed the deck, or it really changed where the deck stands, given it a better shot. You then have the Angelic Rathe, right? Then go over the top. I mean, you can do some pretty crazy things, but a lot of the new stuff that she picked up that you would want to run in her build is no block. And I've definitely, because I have explored the Prism deck quite a bit after Dusk Till Dawn, and you do run into these weird turns where you don't really have anything to do. You don't have a weapon on board to help you cycle, and it gets really weird, right? It can get really weird. Right, Oldhim, I have him in legitimate shot. Unfortunately, the vast majority of folks we've seen playing Oldhim are purely on fatigue, which is a bummer. I think he's good in his own right, but if I compare him and Bravo, he goes down to Bravo because Bravo can come over the top and stops him from doing his pure fatigue thing. To be honest, I don't know if that's just the people who go and play Oldhim can't get off of that concept, or if he is best that way. I think what we've learned from Victor is that Victor's not a defensive hero. He's a defensive based. He gets better aggression out of being defensive. I think that's probably where Oldhim falls, but I think there's too much propensity on Oldhim to play him the other way, and I just don't think he's there. And again, Bravo having, if you're not playing him as Oldhim, then why not play Bravo, right? So that's why I have him where he is. Katsu, I think, again, is perfectly legitimate. There's some pretty cool combo stuff you can do out there. The new mask, also the mask, it's actually not new. It came out in Outsiders, right? And that's the Many Faces mask specifically I'm talking about. Really kind of combos up on him. There's some pretty neat stuff kind of out of Outsiders, but he hasn't changed a whole lot of Outsiders since Outsiders. And if we're being honest with ourselves, if you're going to play a Katsu and try and combo out, it could go great for you. But wouldn't you rather just, it's just the Ira argument. Like, wouldn't you rather just play 2 Kodachi Ira and go 1-2-5 or 1-7? It just seems like the right play. Azalea, I do have in here as well, because you'll hear things like 13 dominate. It's a very common thing, actually, right? It's usually in this format, it's usually a 4. Yeah, it'd be like 13 dominate. Yeah. in Commoner. And sure, you do have 1/5s, right? So it's fair enough. But by and large, it's, the a lot of 0/4s and stuff like that. Kayo is interesting. You can build a very good no miss deck with him, but he's very mathematical aggro. And a lot of times he gets, again, you've got your Wild Rides, your Bare Fangs and stuff like that. Good cards. But they don't block, and sometimes you just need to block, and you can't. Database Dash I also have in this legitimate shot, because if things go right for her, and you get the boom grenades when you need them, there's not a lot they can do about it, right? I mean, one of the coolest plays with her is you're like, okay, popping gauntlets. And they're like, okay, well, the payload's coming, but they can't do anything about it, right? Because you're just like, boost, boom grenade, coming for 8, dominate. What are they going to do in this format, right? Eventually, in this format, we'll be to the point where everybody has 12 armor. It's going to happen at some point, but not today, folks. All right, now for the Bring the Spice, this is kind of to round out the group. I have Benji, I have Dromai, Kano, Briar, and Lexi. Now, the two I expect to take flack on for that, to not have them in the above category, is Briar and Lexi. The issue I'm seeing with Lexi is really just currently lack of... There is a very interesting, in Blitz, just stay with me, in Blitz there's a very interesting Death Dealer, Ice, Dominate, Frostbite build with Lexi. And you can kind of almost do it. I think the better build right now with Lexi is like I used to call it EDD, Extra Damage Dominate. And that's where you're relying on like the frazzles and stuff like that to try and ping. With the loss of Ball Lightning, Lexi took a big hit in Commoner. I mean, she took a big hit in general back in the day. Sans Voltaire, right? She took a big hit back in the day for that, but it'd be interesting to see if in the future they bring back like a 1-cost Ball Lightning or something like that, which might change Lexi. Briar, I just have her on the boat because I don't think she's as good as Chane. I'm also realizing as I'm looking at this that I don't have Viserai on here. So Viserai I also have in Bring the Spice, because he really struggles, because you don't have Mauve, basically, is where you're at there. With Kano, there are some interesting Kano builds. People put a lot of work into getting Kano to work, but he just doesn't have the cards available, and that's okay. I think that's okay for Commoner. Dromai, I have it down to Bring the Spice. We have seen Dromai top 2 of our Commoner crawls in the last 6 months or so. That's Steven doing the work there, and that's where he's bringing the spice. Put a lot of work into that deck, really knows what's going on with it. But without access to the primary dragons in the format, Dromai really relies on the Senepais, the 1/5 red, the 2 1/5 red go agains, and then Rake the Embers, and you're trying to pitch deck that generally. She does well into heroes that don't have consistent poppers, but if they have consistent poppers, there's not a lot Dromai can do. And then Benji, this is on the Bring the Spice, okay? Actually, I mentioned Viserai, but I'm leaving a couple characters out here who I don't even think factor in. That's it. So my apologies on that one. Benji on this one, I do think there's actually a Spice Benji deck that can certainly happen. Him starting with 17 health is rough. But again, remember, he's got the Tiger Paw thing that can slide in for 2 damage. So there you have it. And yes, to that point, I do apologize for the misspeak on Viserai. The heroes who are not here, I do apologize if they're your favorite hero. I don't think they're really viable in the format, right? Teklevossen, for example, is missing. Max Nitro is missing. I don't think that they're viable in the format right now. You've got like Kavdane is technically viable. We've seen him do things before with like the Slogism and what does it play? I forget what it is. Slogism and Regurgitating Slog. That's it, right? Where you get like the super cool Dominate thing. But it's just kind of cute, right? And I don't, again, could it win games? Sure, but I don't think it's going to win a Commoner Crawl tournament or a larger tournament at that. So anyway, that is what I see as the state of the meta. Again, I apologize for that misspeak in the middle. Hey, you got 30-some heroes to go through, so we can't go through them all. So anyway, that is my take as it is now. I know this is a much longer one than our normal midweek Commoner Commando, Jesus, our Commando videos. Apologies. Time to end this one. Thanks, folks, and go Commando.